Three, two, one. And we are live, ladies and gentlemen, for anybody watching. Thank you very much for watching. And before we get into it, I want to discuss a couple things here. I had made a comment in regards to the game director, in regards to Miyazaki for Sekiro, and I said that he wasn't actually the game director for Sekiro. And so I want to kind of make a correction. So I was partially wrong on that statement, but not completely. To be perfectly honest, I actually tried to do this. What I did yesterday when I was rendering and editing the videos and whatnot is doing some more research into, the game developer, because I noticed when I was looking at my previous playthrough, taking notes for the quests and whatnot, that in the credits it says game director Miyazaki, and I was like, wait a minute, that's not what I researched. It was actually another gentleman who I can't remember the name at the time, because it's a Japanese name that's not very common. So, but I'll pull it up later or whatever, maybe the last day or whatever. But anyways, I think what From Software does is, so the way it was stated is that Miyazaki laid the framework in regards to the art style, the concept, and the foundation of what Sekiro was intended to be, and then that was handed off to the title of a co-director, and the co-director, is on the From Software team. He actually worked on Bloodborne, but he wasn't the director of Bloodborne. He worked heavily on the art style of Bloodborne, and he was pretty much the main director. But they give Miyazaki the official game director credit, and I think, and this is not to take away from Miyazaki, because anybody that may be thinking the way I'm framing this is that I'm trying to throw him under the bus or he doesn't deserve the credit. No, I mean, I think we all can agree, Miyazaki is great and has been great for us gamers and for From Software, and he's definitely contributed greatly to, all these games. I just think that the way that the way From Software develops their games is very different than another studio, because, for example, I'd like to use God of War 2018 and God of War Ragnarok as an example. So God of War 2018 was game director was Cory Barlog. There was nobody else. He was the main director. There was no co-directors. There's assistants or whatever, but he was the showrunner. It was his baby for the most part. And I had the pleasure of actually meeting with him and sitting down and talking with him for about an hour at a keynote a year later at here locally in Texas. And, I didn't really have a lot of questions lined up to ask because I didn't expect to be able to talk with him. It was just kind of like it just fell in my lap. It was a great convo. We didn't even talk that much God of War. We talked about games, but we didn't really go too much into God of War. I kind of felt like he had been talked to death about God of War, so we talked about other things. But anyways, he was the prime director. And then when Ragnarok came around, he wanted time to go, time off. And he also wanted to do another project, which we haven't still to this day. I don't know what's going on with it because nothing, it's all been rumored, but nothing official. So we don't really know what's going on with him in regards to the other project. But he brought in another director, and this director, again, I don't have his name, but it's a different director for Ragnarok. And a lot of the cast or people that worked on God of War 2018 didn't want to come back unless Cory was directing. And Cory had to, really talk several people, into coming back for the sequel, even though he wasn't going to be there. And Christopher Judge was one of them. And Christopher Judge, this is verified. You can go online. There's interviews with him, talking about it. And I think he even said that even at the Game Awards, where, he said he didn't want to come back unless Cory was directing. But Cory was able to sit down with him and talk him into it. And, of course, Christopher Judge came back and reprised his role. So anyways, what ended up happening with God of War Ragnarok is something similar that I think happened with Sekiro. Cory actually came in with God of War Ragnarok, and even though he's not the official game director, he was really doing a lot of advising and supervising for the game. Like, he was kind of behind the scenes, but he didn't actually, do the full like directing. That was still done by the other guy. And I think that's kind of what happened with Sekiro. Although I do think Miyazaki had a lot more hand in the development, at least in the beginning, because this I did read when I went back to research that he kind of laid the foundation, but the co-director was kind of like the main guy. I suspect, and I could be wrong on this, I suspect that the reason why Sekiro was labeled with Miyazaki being the main game director was for the same reason that I talked about prior. At least I don't know if I did in the first day, about how people love to call all these games Souls-likes. Like, everybody, whenever an action RPG comes out, everybody wants to label it a Souls-like when generally that's not the case. I don't really want to get into that discussion because I start getting a little bit jaded, because I think the term is overused. And I think a lot of the games that get labeled as Souls-likes are not Souls-likes. But a friend of mine pointed out something to me that hadn't occurred to me. It's a marketing strategy. If you tell people that you've got an action RPG that you're releasing, and it's not really going to do as well unless you actually call it a Souls-like. Because if you don't call it anything, you just say, yeah, here's this action RPG, it's going to get eyes. You can put out the trailer, it'll probably get eyes. But if you call it a Souls-like, oh, everybody's looking. And when my friend pointed that out to me, I was like, yep, that makes sense. So I don't like it, but it makes sense. And that's when it started to kind of, make me think, did they do that with Miyazaki, labeling him as the game director of Sekiro, as a marketing thing to get players to, give it a chance, because it wasn't, an actual Soul. This is not a Souls game. This is a very different game. So by saying, yeah, Miyazaki's the director, I think more people would be more inclined to give it a try. I don't want to take anything away from him in regards to his hand in the game, but I don't think that he was the primary game director, and I would encourage anybody to do research into it. I'm going to continue to research this because I'm very curious about From Software's development process, because I've read about their development process in the past, and what I understand, and this is from an interview from Miyazaki, is what they'll oftentimes do, and I just want to point something out. I did go to art school, so I understand the artistic process of, developing an art piece from beginning to the end. And I'll give an example. So if you're doing, like, let's say you're going to do a creature and character design, well, you're going to kind of start out with, a list of what you're looking to accomplish with the creature and character. You might, you're going to write down a few bullet points. You may even go into a bit of psychology on it, the anatomy, things like that. And then once you kind of got that framework, and that's before you start drawing or anything, then once you got that down, and I'm skipping a rock across water here, then you start doing what is known as thumbnails. These are just really fast sketches, not very time consuming, just trying to get your ideas down on paper. And then you'll do about, anywhere from, 10 to 20 of them, depending on, how explosive your creativity is. And then out of those, you'll pick, maybe 5, and then you'll take those 5 and you'll take them a little bit further from a thumbnail to a little bit more of a higher rendering. And then you'll take those and then present those in front of like a council, like maybe your colleagues, and you'll show the different ones that you have, and then you can get feedback on, which ones are good, which ones aren't, which one looks good but maybe could be improved, and maybe be the one selected. And then you end up picking, maybe 1 or 2 out of that, and then you take them a little bit further, or maybe just pick the one, and then you've got the final one, and then you go all balls to the wall with it, do full renderings, turnarounds, sculptures, or 3D models, and then you got your final piece. So I think what Miyazaki is done, and I just kind of skipped a rock across the water here. That's kind of the basic process. There's a little bit more to it than that, but I'm just trying to get the gist down. But I think what Miyazaki did with Sekiro is, I think he did kind of the basic, framework, because this was what I did read, and that was handed off to another game director, because he actually went on to develop begin work on Elden Ring. And you can't really direct two games at the same time. Not like this. I mean, you need to give it full attention. If you go and look at Peter Jackson, after Peter Jackson, was when he went to go do the Lord of the Rings films, he wasn't doing King Kong while he was doing Lord of the Rings. I mean, yes, he had the luxury of doing all three films, so he was able to kind of like work on all three simultaneously, but doing certain shots and then piecing it together. But I think the way he works is, I think he does a very similar process like I laid out. And then once he's got, like the framework, then he will hand it off to a co-director, the way they frame it, and then they'll work on it. And then he comes in and kind of keeps evaluating the process, and then maybe makes corrections or additions or things like that. And to me, I don't really call that game directing. I wouldn't say it's not, but it's something different. And it works, though. That's the thing. It works very well, clearly. I mean, because I would say, even though I have issues with Elden Ring, I do think that pretty much all their games are successful. And one of the things that I love about From Software, if you look at any other game that gets released, one of the things that I love about From Software is when they announce a game, the game, by the time they have announced the game, is already 2/3 to 3/4 of the way complete. And they'll put out a trailer. And they don't give a release date. They'll just put out like a trailer. Kind of like what they did with the new Dusk. I think it's called Dustbloods. The new one coming out on Switch 2. So they put out a trailer. No release date. And then usually about a year to 2 years later, they'll put out another trailer. And then they'll put a release date. And the release date is usually like within just a few, like a few months, like 3 months or so. And then they release their game on the date that they state. And what's crazy is, and if for anybody, that can look at the timeline, Sekiro, I believe Sekiro was released in 2019. Elden Ring was released in 2022. Now let's take a look at the timeline here. Sekiro started development, around the same time Elden Ring did. Elden Ring was slightly, like, Sekiro started first, and then not, like, literally at the beginning of Sekiro's development, they started Elden Ring. And I think they were already brainstorming beforehand. Then, Miyazaki goes to kind of focus more on Elden Ring. Sekiro gets released in 2019, and then what happens in 2020? The pandemic. And the pandemic was disruptive, huge around the world. And a lot of, places were shut down, developers not being able to work and develop the way they normally would. So a lot of people were wondering, why didn't we get a DLC for Sekiro? I don't know for sure, but I suspect it was because of the pandemic. Because their resources were already, kind of stressed out with Elden Ring, and then they get hit with the pandemic, and it's like, oh, we gotta have all of our sources so we can try to meet the deadline, because there was so much, money on the line, and this was going to be their big game to break out of the niche crowd of the Souls group and being open to getting to more players, and they were hugely successful at that. And they were still, I don't know, they never really gave a release date for Elden Ring, which is they kind of got lucky, because had they done that and then the pandemic hit, they might have actually had to do something they've never had to do and push the game back. But because they didn't give a release date, they were kind of in the safe zone, and they could have continued to work on Elden Ring even longer if they wanted to. So, and then they kind of made up for it with the DLC, because if you look at the DLC of Elden Ring, I mean, it's got problems. I mean, the main issue with the game is you've got this amazing world, arguably better than the base game, and there's like no enemies. the whole world is like just empty. There's very few enemies. That was like my main issue with both games, but the DLC was even worse. Like they could have condensed the world a little bit more to make it a little more linear within the sections, but it still would have been open world, kind of like what they did with the Dark Souls world. I mean, it was so amazing, but it did kind of miss the mark. But I do think that that's kind of the reason why. So I just wanted to kind of clarify that I wasn't exactly right in regards to him not being the game director of Sekiro, but I wasn't entirely wrong either. I just think the way they develop their games is a lot different than another developer would do it. Like, as I mentioned with Corey with God of War, Corey was not a, game director for Ragnarok. And the guy who did direct it wasn't a co-director. He was an official director. And I kind of feel that's similar with what happened with Miyazaki and Sekiro. And to a certain degree, like, I almost feel that because Miyazaki's about my age, he's about in his 50s, early 50s. So I'm kind of thinking, I don't know how long he plans to work and continue to develop games, but each game that they generally develop, takes, about 3 to 5 years. And if I don't know, I'm kind of thinking, how many more games does he have left to develop, that he's going to continue to work? He might be one of those people that works until the day he dies. And if that's the case, then we're looking at several more games. Or he may end up retiring at, 65. And if that's the case, he's got 3 games at most, maybe 4 if he does this, this supervision director the way he's been doing. Either way, that's cool. But I do kind of feel that they should start bringing in and propping up the other directors like they did with, like with Sekiro, so players can start getting more familiar and getting a little bit more trust built. Because if a day comes where Miyazaki retires, I'm not saying that people aren't going to be willing to buy From Software games, but I think there's a chance where players may be like, well, I may not want to buy this because Miyazaki's not directing, because he's retired or whatever. And I also went back and looked at the Game Awards to see if the co-director for Sekiro was the one that went on stage, and he was not. It was Miyazaki and his translator, and then there were two other guys who I couldn't identify. And then I went and looked at the Elden Ring Game Awards, and it was the same guy, the same translator. So they didn't even have the co-director go on stage with Miyazaki for Sekiro. So again, I'm not trying to take anything away. I know a lot of people will be like thinking that that's what I'm trying to do here. I'm not. Like, I love Miyazaki probably just as much as anybody else that loves these games. But I would like to know a little bit more about, the other team members, especially the ones, because I do think that the co-director probably should be given a little bit more credit than he is, because like nobody knows this guy. Nobody knows his name really. It's always like defaults to Miyazaki, and I don't think that's good. I think the other artists should be known. I'll give an example. When I was in art school, I was looking to going after graduating college to working for Todd McFarlane. But Todd McFarlane had he had a toy line. I forget the name of it, but where he had a bunch of sculptor artists sculpt out different movie characters and whatnot. And I was looking to possibly go and work for him. I had pretty good connections of getting in and getting hired. I won't go into the reasons why I didn't do that, but one of the things that I frowned upon, and one of the reasons why I was kind of like not really sure I wanted to go work at McFarlane Toys, although it would have been a great experience and the people there I knew would be good people to work with, the sculptor artists don't get credit. If you look at the back of the box of any of the Todd McFarlane pieces, the person that gets credit is Todd McFarlane. He does not credit the artist at all. But then if you go and look at NECA Toys, which is another toy line company, I don't know if they're still around, they credit the artists. And I don't know if Sideshow Collectibles credits the artists, but it's important to do that because there's so much plagiarism in the industry and work that doesn't get credited to the right people. Like when I was in college, I got plagiarized, and it was the first time it had ever happened to me. And I wasn't worried about the money. I was more worried about the credit, because the credit is the most important part, because that's what's going to get you future jobs. So, although, From Software is going to be a bit of a different beast. But anyways, So that was kind of one of the things I wanted to talk about. So a bit of a minor correction, but I would encourage those who are interested, do more research. And if you want to leave a comment below making corrections to what I'm saying, I'm not above admitting when I'm wrong. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I'll admit it. My ego's not that inflated. I'm more concerned about knowing truth than being right. So the other thing that I did is I did a little more research into the quests, and there are 3 checkpoints where I need to do backup saves. So I should be okay. When we kill the Guardian Ape, there's a lotus flower in front of the cave that he's facing when you first engage him. Now, we don't want to pick that at that point. We'll do that once we're ready to move on in the game, but it's a checkpoint that changes the world state. And once you do that, it locks you out all your quests or anything else. So you have to do everything before you pick that lotus flower. So that's one. The other main save point is when we go to engage Father Owl, because that will allow us to do the different endings. So I'll need to do a save point there so I can reload and do the other endings. I'm probably not going to do all 4, but I want to do the sure ending where you don't kill Father Owl and you actually fight the woman NPC and Ishin Ashima, and then that ends the game, and then you go reload and do the second one. You fight Father Owl, and then you go on to do a lot more content. And then there was another point where it's good to save. I'm trying to remember what, but anyways, that was the kind of like the main things that I wanted to kind of discuss and get into. Oh, so another thing that I want to do. Let me do it over here. So I've been very, very conservative about what skills to level up. And like, I don't really have, much spent. And I've got a few skill points. And I've been kind of reserving because I didn't know like exactly like what direction I wanted to go, what moves I want to do or whatever. Until I feel like the need, I'll just, buy only what I feel I need. I did watch a couple videos on how to deal with snake eyes, and there is a much better strategy with snake eyes than what I was doing. But even with like, if you're fighting him right out the way I was doing it, because I actually watched Fighting Cowboy do his. He was a lot more powerful in the game at the time when he went to go fight him. So that gave it a bit of an advantage. But even with that, trying to fight him outright, he was struggling pretty hard too. But he did show that if you use the umbrella prosthetic, you can use that and build that stamina damage against the snake eyes. And then if you've already done the critical hit, you've only got the 1 health bar. So that would be probably the better way to deal with him in the future. Another thing, if I'm not burned out by the game, by the time of the end of the game, I may do New Game Plus, because I mentioned that I don't like doing New Game Plus because you're overpowered. You already got all these abilities, you're leveled up, and I feel like it not saying that I'd be mastered at the game by then, but I'll definitely be better. I mean, you're going to get better the more you do it, but I was thinking, I don't really want to do it because just like the other New Game Pluses, I always felt overpowered and there's really not that much challenge. But then I thought of something. That demon bell that you get access to, you can increase the difficulty. So I was thinking, and you can activate that early in the game because like almost the beginning of the game, you just have to go down that hallway or that cave past that first headless, and then you can activate it and you can turn it on and off as needed. And the cool thing about that is we could actually use that to increase the difficulty and make New Game Plus actually challenging. So anyways, that's just something I was thinking of maybe doing.
何か言おうか。
I didn't know he was going to have a monologue here. Okay. I don't think we have any news. Oh, we do. We have this one. So any prosthetic that is only using those materials, because we can buy those unlimited, we can upgrade those. So those we want to hold off on because I'm not sure we can buy those. Same with that. Yeah, I'm going to hold off on that. The big fat guy that we can send to that NPC where we have to get him that pinwheel. Once we send him to that NPC, he unlocks the ability to buy a lot of these mats. And then once we do that, which we're going to start working on, then we'll go ahead and start upgrading all of this. So I'm going to hold off on upgrading. We can do this though. I don't know if we'd use it though. Yeah, we'll go ahead and upgrade this. So these we're going to have to hold off on until we do that quest. Okay.
ではな、また久しくらいならかしてやろう。
There is some backtracking that we need to do. I think we need to talk to him.
よう旦那、また商いが必要かね。
Okay.
じゃあな旦那。
So we want to go back to where we fought the second Snake Eyes. I think over here. Yeah, because we need to get up there. Now, Snake Eyes is already dead, so we don't have to worry about him. I forgot to mention that this mod that I am using, this one, the reason I'm using it and originally why I downloaded it was because it has an auto loot feature. I forgot to mention that on day one. I mentioned that I was using it for the field of view. That's not even the reason. That was just kind of like an extra thing that I, ended up using. And it wasn't because of the death penalties either. The developers, they did not put in an auto loot function into the game. So every time you kill an enemy, you have to press the button and hold it in order to loot. And a lot of people were complaining about that, me being one of them. And I know now why they didn't do that. Because if the game auto loots, the developers want you farming in this game. And there are certain points in the game where you can go and kill the enemies. And if by default you're not auto looting, when you kill all the enemies in an area, then you can pop a balloon. Let me pull up the balloon here. I don't remember which one it is. I think it's the green one. Yeah, this one. It's this one. So you kill all the enemies in an area, like the Harada State is one place, and you'll probably have like 20 enemies killed or something like that. And then what you can do is pop the balloon and run, and then hold the loot, and then you get more loot that way. But that's if you want to farm. I don't like farming, so I don't care about that. But that's the reason why they didn't have the auto loot. I think what they should have done is given an option to disable auto loot in the menu, and gone ahead and just give us a loot, an auto loot option. I think that would have been the better way to go. Okay, cool. Prayer beads are good. I like prayer beads. There's another shiny over there. And then that stupid monkey that kicked the shit out of us. He also, there's some more loot over there, which we can go grab. And then there was loot that we missed when we were doing the guardian snake. Or the big snake. Apparently this monkey booze you give to the NPCs like the sculptor or Emma, and they give you different lore monologue. It's not required though. You don't need to do it for like the quest or anything, but if you kind of want that lore. Oh. I guess we do need to. Okay. So since Snake Eyes isn't here, alerting that asshole. So the better way to deal with this encounter is come from that waypoint over there, not this one. I also found out that in order to get this up here, jump. Come on. There we go. So you do fall from the ceiling over here. We have to go back for that. It's not a big deal, but I was trying to figure out like why did we come from that way, because we've never done that. Playing a little bit differently here, but it still works. Yeah, we need that. So yeah, it's better to come from that waypoint over here, sneak around, get the death blow on Snake Eyes, and then fight him over here like I was, but then use like the umbrella to build the damage. I don't know if we can. Nope, it's not letting us. To build the stamina damage to eventually kill him. Oh. Oh, we can't go back that way. There's no hook. Okay. Well, okay, fine. Okay, I think we need to go here. I think this is the guardian ape here. Which sucks, because that means we're going to have to descend all the way the fuck down again. There is loot down there we needed to get, but I was hoping there was a... I was hoping we could go the back way, but there's no hook. So we're going to have to take the long road. Let me put on... Might try the umbrella on the monkey. I'm going to skip this first one, though. Actually, you know what? Let's try it. Because the other one we can do the backstab on. Wait, he didn't take any damage? Does he have regeneration? Because I've hit him a couple times. Yeah, I've hit him. This fucking thing is nuts, dude. Wasn't doing very good with the umbrella. Yes, we do need that. Good thing we came back. Now, even though I have the mod for unlimited consumables, it doesn't work for crafting mats because they're not consumables in the same, which is fine. I think that would be a little bit, because that would make you would give at that point we'd kind of get access to probably being a little bit overpowered at that point.
Goku.
I don't think he has anything we need. Nope. Okay, so since the snake is gone now, there are some items that we missed. So I'm hoping we can pick those up. You know, we'll just use the shurikens on it. That torch doesn't do shit. Oh, he's still here? I thought he was going to be gone. Not good. Oh, yes, we need that. Yeah, we need to get over there. I don't think we can. Oh. Oh. Okay. Oh, you can't block those? Okay, well, we got the loot. That's what we came for. Okay, but he's not here. Like, his body's here. He's not here. Oh, there he is. Okay, we don't need to do this again, so I'm just going to warp out. Good thing we went back and got that loot. Okay. I'm not really sure where we need to go next. There was some loot that we missed, but it's candies. We don't really need it down here. We do need to go back over there. Need the fire. Let's try the normal one. I don't like how the other one does that knockback. Do we need to buy anything from this dude?
Good.
We're not ready for the mask fragment yet. You know what? So we don't have to come back to this dude. We're gonna go ahead and buy it.
死者たちに 極意
Okay. So we don't need to worry about buying anything from that dude. We need to go talk to that. We need to go talk to that black mask dude. Or that munchkin dude. Okay. Yeah, I think he's over here if I remember right. Perfect.
よう、おめえか。また何か入り用なのかい？
Okay, so there's... Okay, we bought everything from him, so...
おめえ、知ってるか？このアシナの城にはな、外からのネズミがわんさと来てら、そういったネズミをよ、バッタバッタと切りまくるおっかねえジジイがいるんだぜ。
天狗の面か。
おお、おめえも見たのか。
ああ、話だ。
そいつは驚きだ。よくまだ首がつながってるもんだな。さてと、おかげさんでだいぶ銭もたまったぜ。支度にゃ十分だ。ぼちぼち行くとするかね。
どこへだ？
金剛山の千宝寺。
Yes.
最近この辺は富にネズミが多い。きな臭くなってきたからよ。きっと野暮用を済ませておきてえのさ。
That's what we want. Okay. Now he should be gone when we come back. Cool. All right. Now, once we get the swimming ability, we have to come back over here. Same with over here. I don't think I'm going to go back to the, Yeah, fuck it, we'll go over there. Actually, we could. Yeah, fuck it, we'll go check it out. As there was some loot that we can even see it right here. That should be pretty easy to get to. Ouch. fucker. Oh. I'm about to die because of this fucker. Yep, and I'm fucking dead. That's why you can't fuck around with these fools. What the hell? Oh, okay, we got 2, 3 of them shooting. Yeah, there's no cover whatsoever down here. Okay. Not worth it. Alright. We do need to... Yeah. So, I remember dropping down there and I'm like, there's got to be more down there. And I was pretty sure there was, and there is. And it's because I missed this. So we came down here. There was some loot down here, but we didn't go this way. Now, this is one of the genius design concepts that I really love about From Software. So I mentioned before that they use a tight field of view, and it makes it, you know, a little more difficult to seeing things that you might miss from like loot or hidden passages and things like that. But in addition to that, like when you drop right here and you look around, like if you look that way, I mean, you can kind of see that there's a way, but it kind of blends in like to where the environment doesn't look like you can progress that way. So you almost have to like, you know, walk around the wall to make sure that you're seeing what you think you're seeing. But yeah, we missed this. Okay, so we can go left or right. Okay, we're going right to start. Nothing. Okay. And that's where we came from. Left or right? We'll go right.